so I feel like I'm in a boy band with this silly thing on. But hi, my name's Dave. I'm talking about some very simple stuff today that amuses me, so hopefully it amuses you. Basically, metadata getting leaked from your Wi-Fi device, mostly your phone. Talk louder. Yes. Oh, okay, sorry. I'll talk louder. My name is Dave. This talk is pretty much dealing with metadata with your wireless devices, predominantly your cell phones, but it actually kind of works for other devices too. Requisite stuff. I'm old. I am interested in boring stuff. I've got a bunch of certs. I think my technical term is a red team operator. I work for a company called ReliQuest out of Tampa, Florida. Do managed security services, red teaming, a bunch of other fun stuff. You know, we can find someone who's probably called sales guy if you guys are interested, but we will move on from there. Just to go ahead and warn you, if you couldn't hear from me stammering, this is my first talk, so I very much apologize in advance. I will try to get through this as quickly and painlessly as absolutely possible. Someone told me I should have a lot of fun graphics in here, so let me try to get those out of the way as quickly as possible. I've been looking at these things for years, so I'm just going to try to do what everyone else does for information security talks. But quick and easy intro. I am fascinated by auto discovery and auto config. We all know this stuff. They try to make it easy. It's for our moms and our grandmas and all that, and it has to be that way because then they will have problems and have to call the Geek Squad. We don't want that. So basically, we know wireless networks, you're already connected to it, then you go home, your cell phone reconnects. It's because it's sending out beacons saying, hey, wireless network, you out there, your AP at home says, yep, I'm here, it connects, everyone's happy. We all know that's a great way to do a man-in-the-middle attack. It's pretty simple to detect those probes going out, and well, we all pretty much know that that's very, very possible, but everyone else pretty much knows that too, so let's be honest there. And I'm still kind of amazed that these things work as well as they do as long as everyone has known about these things, because businesses watch these things now. These things are in the news left and right, and then you still hear about people getting owned by them. So my thought was kind of, okay, probes are cool. What else can we possibly do with them? So again, first off, nothing you're going to see here is new. Nothing's really complex. Almost everything we're going to go over, you could just do on a Windows box completely with the web browser, bouncing between some pages and stuff. This is really just I get nerdily focused on something and I decide to connect some dots and write some scripts and automate this stuff. So to try to put some ideas in this to perspective, a friend that I work with told me a fun story that I thought seemed to fit. And it was a story about some guys that were arrested in Italy in 2005. Courts sent out warrants for 26 American nationals for extraordinary rendition of a Muslim cleric from the streets of Milan. And extraordinary rendition, gotta admit, that was a new one for me. It sounds really cool, but kidnapping is so much quicker to say. Usually it's when it's, you know, operatives and people doing that kind of stuff. So kidnapping, you think jerks on the street, but well, this is official jerks. CIA operatives, easier to say than American nationals, and it comes down to pretty much, this was cell phone OPSEC fail. People didn't know what the heck they were doing. We're going to share these slides. You can find this talk by a guy named Matthew Cole, who, if memory serves, was an NBC producer who did a talk at Black Hat. Totally non-technical guy, got to a Black Hat talk. He did a fascinating talk about this story. Definitely would recommend you go and check it out. It's like 20, 30 minutes long. So really it comes down to this guy got kidnapped, and the Italian authorities started looking into information. They started pulling metadata from cell phone towers in the general area, and they quickly went through and found a pattern of about 18 people with give or take 30 cell phones, and they noticed that all these cell phones were talking back and forth to each other, and this just screamed out in analytics and data to them. So they started looking closer to this. So they started figuring out the phone numbers and names associated, and they started mapping times and location, and they pretty much figured out and mapped it all the way to where this guy got picked up, and then those cell phones kind of disappeared because they later figure out these operatives grabbed this guy and got the hell out of the country to eventually get this guy back to an American territory. But one thing they did was they kind of did the profile up into where these agents' days would end, which would be at a home or usually a hotel. And these guys thought, okay, I'm smart. I'm going to protect my cell phone by putting it in a Faraday cage. And they thought, I'm going to get a snack packet of some chips or something and tuck my phone in there and not turn it off or disconnect the battery. And I get the concept behind what I think they were doing is, you know, if go out the machine here, pull out some chips, you open it up, it's nice and silver inside because it's aluminum foil. That's how they are in America. Apparently in European and Middle Eastern countries over there, the snack packets don't have the metal stuff inside, so they just stuck their cell phone into a light, thin piece of plastic and thought that that was blocking stuff, and didn't really work out so good for them. But this is a great story and all that, but at the end of the day, favorite phrase, nation state. We're talking nation state budgets, people who have damn near unlimited money. We can't really do that. So I thought with this story, let's see how close we can get. So ignoring stuff like big expensive devices to check stuff, ignoring Wi-Fi pineapples, let's just what else do stuff like Wi-Fi probes show us? Really simply, it shows networks you're trying to connect to, the MAC address of the device, that kind of gives you the brand of the device, gives you some stuff that may be helpful, like, you know, what modes the devices can connect in, speed stuff, the chipset on the device, you know, helpful stuff potentially. So if we wanted to try to pretend we were a government and look at this stuff and try to figure out where these agents were, kind of like the Milan guys did, you could kind of take a swipe at it. I mean, you could look and see the MAC addresses and see patterns in device brands. Like if you all of a sudden saw a bunch of Samsung or Apples and the MAC addresses were pretty darn close, you could kind of surmise that maybe these were all bought into a batch and all that, and, you know, were distributed at the same time to these different folks. Multiple devices probing to reconnect to the same odd or unknown networks. If you're seeing something funky and all of a sudden you're seeing probes from all these different devices probing to it, maybe these are guys that are hanging out in the same place, connected to the same network and all that. So just for an example, you know, I figured let's look at some data, decide on a target, and see what we can do, just kind of theoretical. Again, I apologize. This is the 6th or 7th version of this talk. It bounced around so much, I had to stop myself from adding more stuff to it because there's just so much data. So I'm going to go through a lot of these slides quick. They'll be up and available if you're interested. You can find it later. First, fingerprinting a target. Like I said, fairly easy. You got to be near this person. Their cell phone's probably blasting out these probes here left and right. And just go ahead and record them. It's very easy. It's passive. You're not connecting to them. Theoretically, you're not breaking any laws in this country, or don't quote me, as far as I know, any other country, since you're just passively listening to stuff. And then step 2 is to kind of figure out, because you're going to see a crap load of MAC addresses. Everyone in this room's got at least one device that's sending out a probe right now, probably, given that this is a technical conference. We've all got 3 or 4, let's be honest. So usually you can look at the SSID if you know a little bit about your target and kind of narrow it down. Like if you do know the target's name, you can look at the name. It still kills me how many people have like their name or their last name and just their home networks. Boom, done. If you know where this person works, look at their business name. Might be a really simple name, especially if it's like a small business or something. They often do have like their name in there. Device type, if you're in the same area as the person, you can check it out and see, oh, this guy's got a Samsung S5 or they've got an Apple iPhone or something, and you can look up the OUI and kind of get a vibe of, okay, this device probably is that, maybe not. And then again, if you know the target's name and a little bit about them, you can just dig online to their favorite social media sites. Look at freaking Foursquare to see where these folks are checking in every weekend at their favorite bar or hamburger joint or something. Great chance they're listening in on their Wi-Fi there, and they might be probing about it here because they're used to just walking back in there and having free Wi-Fi because, yeah, it's cheap. Why not? So you're down to a MAC address. You're pretty sure you know who it is. And back to, again, looking at other SSIDs. It's, like I said, office SSID, company size, name could be unique. Restaurants, like I said, are great. Obviously, locally owned stuff or have weird names and stuff. Almost always, they're going to either have a generic name like Linksys, or they're going to have, you know, mom and pop's restaurant or whatever. Or then even some of the bigger chains like Applebee's. I found a lot of times Applebee's and a lot of other places like that will have something, either store name or just a information about the location of it. Like, you know, my example here is Applebee's UCF. I'm actually from Tampa, and over there's an area called Temple Terrace where I lived. Applebee's there is called Applebee's Temple Terrace. Not too hard there. Back to, if you know some about them, there's a chance that their home might have a weird name, again, connected back to their name, a nickname, a phrase. Maybe it's ISP based, which could be even more helpful, because if you know that that's them and you see that get broadcasted out, oftentimes those are unique. I found this online, though I think I would probably die laughing if I found Uncle Tudgy's Puzzle Basement. But a quick sidebar, I love ISPs. Don't get me wrong, if you go to certain websites and see like a national average of the most popular SSIDs out there, you will find like Linksys and stuff like that. Then a few of them, I think Charter and Comcast will use kind of a generic one based on their service. But since we're in Central Florida, let's look at the ones we have here. Bright House Networks. You will see a lot of these around, like BHN, these like we have on there, TGN, blah, 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 C812. These are fantastic because these are almost exactly unique. They're unique to the device, mind you, but depending on when you've seen it and when the data you have to analyze was done, that can pretty much narrow stuff down because it looks sort of kind of random. Unless you know a little bit about it and you know that that's BHN, it's the model of the device, and then the last 4 is just the MAC address of the actual device you're looking at. So then it's completely unique, and you can easily find that person. BIOS in the area, similar. You'll see originally when they first came out, you'd see like the 5 characters, random letters and numbers. I think a lot of us probably knew that they figured out that they had a weird pattern for web encoding where their password was basically based on that SSID, and you could run a little mathematical formula on it, and it would pop out 1 of 2 passwords, which like 90% of the time was the password, so you could log in. They've mostly fixed that, but you do sometimes find those networks. You start seeing more modern equipment from FiOS. It's about the same, just has FiOS tagged on the front than has that. The basis of those names and how those are based, I unfortunately have 0 idea, but the good thing is they're still unique. You're probably only going to see 1 of those unless those get redistributed elsewhere. So if you know this guy's phone is advertising out this SSID, you know a unique device to go look for them. So again, we look and we have some SSIDs, and the question there is how easy is it to take an SSID to a street address? And the answer is actually pretty darn easy. The script that you see there, I am very bad, so I tend to name scripts of very, very bluntly what they do. That's just taking SSID, translating it to a latitude and longitude, going to an address on Google API, and poof. This is a real SSID. I use this one because I'm not exactly positive what it is, but it's some sort of business in kind of an industrial area in Tampa. So I went ahead and put the address on there. That's the latitude and longitude that SSID had been detected at, and then I referenced Google's Maps API, and there's a street address. And I went from maybe standing next to someone that I don't know, passively sniffing some stuff, not touching their device, to knowing where they work or live, depending on what that address qualifies as. So again, not quite that easy. This does have some scripts behind it, but I'm going to put the scripts up and you'll see these say .sh on the end because they're bash scripts, because I didn't have time to try to do this cleanly in Python or anything like that. That's the next goal, but it's really simple. At the end of the day, like I say here, this is what I would say would be resolving metadata. Goes from an SSID to a latitude, longitude based on finding that SSID in a database that could have been a local or remote one, and then it just grabs latitude and longitude and hands it off to Google Maps, says give me a street address, and poof, Google comes out with an address, and suddenly look like I've done something really cool, and it's really, really simple, and kind of scary that it's this simple in many ways. I almost say that this is stunt hacking. When we hear stunt hacking, we think about the guys that go hack Jeeps and stuff, and in specialized little locations where they hack the Jeep and the news comes out and talks about it like, you driving home will randomly get, your vehicle flip over and you'll be in a ditch and die, and really it's in more specialized locations. Really, honestly, there's great uses for this, but to an extent, one of the best use is, I would say, stunt hacking. If you have someone you need to impress or scare the crap out of, this will do it. You go from someone not knowing nothing about them, and then thinking, okay, you're just some security guy, whatever. What do they know? To being able to say, here's your home address, here's what you connect to, here's what your cell phone is, here's where you like to go hang out and get your drink on. They suddenly start listening to you really quickly, so it's a good use for it. At the end of the day, really, and this I tell the woman at home because she often looks, she's not a technical person, and she still lets me stay and be around her, God love her. She says it's creepy, and my answer is, can this get any creepier? And I think it can. So say in this example, we didn't know their name. Say this is someone that we saw someone, we were pretty sure, okay, this person's got an iPhone. Maybe we know because where they're at, this person works for XYZ company. And we used some of these examples that we had in there earlier, and we figured out, okay, this is their MAC address, and here's their SSIDs. And we got it down to a street address. Well, I think we've all done here in the States property records. Every county's got their property appraiser. You can go on, if someone owns property, you can find their name, their address. You can find out if that's their primary location, if it's been homesteaded, or maybe that's an investment property. Well, the problem is not everyone owns where they live. So what about voter records? A lot of people vote. It's luckily, and either for good or bad, depending on what side you're on, it has become much more common. A lot of people there vote absentee ballots, make it easy. So what about voter records? So finding a voter is really, really easy as well, because just like property records, you'd be kind of freaked out by how much voter records is considered public domain information and is searchable. Look for your state online. If you're looking for information about someone in another state, search for that state and you'll find it. Most examples I found, it's CSVs broken up by county, so you can even kind of narrow it down so you're not searching through a bunch of data. They make it shockingly easy, which creeps me out. So again, back to this, I'm blocking out for obvious reasons. This is actually one of the SSIDs that's my own personal equipment at home. I typed it in. It came back with the SSID. It had been seen, came back with the latitude and longitude, bounced it against Google address, Google Maps API. It didn't quite get it. It said that the address was basically the house, like if I was walking into my house, it's the guy right to the left of me's house. And then I ran it against the database I had for voting information, and I'm blocking that out, but it came back with the name of the dude that I know rented the house right next door to me. So knowing one SSID, I now know the guy's street address. So I mean, it's one thing to keep in mind. This stuff is not getting you down to exactly the location. If you don't want to use this specifically, if you're going to use it for any sort of legal purposes, or if you're shady and plan to go hunt someone down and beat them up, probably you want to kind of check on this stuff a little bit first. But still, even an example for myself, going from my own SSID to the guy who lives next door is a little creepy. So back to, we know who they are, we know where they live. If the goal is to man in the middle of them, like we discussed, a lot of times enterprise Wi-Fi stuff knows how to look for all of us crazy bastards with our Wi-Fi pineapples or just Karma on your laptop, whatever. Their office will have that stuff. Their house probably does not. No matter what training these people have of how to watch out for Wi-Fi in public, when they go home, what are they going to do? This is my Wi-Fi device. I'm connecting to it. I'm going to start looking at Facebook on the couch on my phone. Another benefit it is 99.9% of everyone at home, the traffic that they're producing or creating on their network is going straight out to the internet, to Facebook, Gmail, whatever. It's not getting bounced internally usually. I'm sure a lot of folks in this room, considering this conference, it does, but the average person, depending on who you're looking at, it's going straight out to the internet. So less likely they're going to notice you in the middle as long as you give them some internet on the other side. So then boom, you've manned in the middle of them, you're looking at all their traffic, they're looking at Netflix and Facebook or Russian Facebook or whatever. And so the question again is there any way to get a little bit creepier with this? This is unfortunately kind of one of those times where I started realizing this was getting a little bit too long and had to stop myself. Another thing that I'm fascinated about is Bluetooth. And with devices becoming more smart, I'm back to being terrified, because now we know where these people, what their name is, probably where they live and work. There's probably some sort of Bluetooth device in their house. There's smart televisions. I see these things all over the place, and they are just horribly designed. You'd be amazed what you can connect to and start finding info on there. And the thing is smart televisions tend to have microphones and cameras, just like devices that, laptops or whatnot. You got gaming headsets. You got telephone headsets like people all walk around with. Everyone's got those things on. So there's plenty of devices out there that have microphones connected to them if you wanted to go so far as start to listen into these people. So the first part of this is, again, with the problem of this not exactly being an exact science, so to speak, I'm targeting myself, and really I have to address the guy next door, is you want to make sure if you're going to start looking at these people's Bluetooth devices, you're looking at the right one. So the first step is, if you're going to go the farther step and start sniffing Bluetooth traffic, is you want to see traffic going on. You know pretty confidently, what their cell phone is. You want to make sure you're looking at Bluetooth devices that they're definitely connected to. So you need to figure out the Bluetooth address on the phone. And the best part about that is the cheapness of cell phone providers. They do it all in one sock. It's all in one chip. Their Wi-Fi and their Bluetooth, so that means they have a whole bunch of MAC addresses handed to them, and 99.9% of the time, it's one hex decimal off from the Wi-Fi address you already have. People call this an exploit, the off by one. Seriously, it almost always is either up one or down one in hex. I'm super lazy, so I spent the time to write a little script in to actually do the math and then do an HCI name info request out just to automate it for myself, but it's really not complex. So now you know what they're listening to or what they're talking to. Again, actually breaking into that connection is probably not so easy. Maybe you can do it, maybe you can't. Go start spending way too much money on Bluetooth fun like I do. But even not necessarily listening into active conversations or connections that these folks are having from their phone to these devices may be easier once they're done connecting to it to just connect directly to that device and then start listening in their home, theoretically, as someone I know likes to say. Again, this is all kind of questionable, but at this point I kind of realized I was getting a little bit too far down this rabbit hole, and that's a little bit more for another time. I'm going to start digging more into this. But let's see. Quickly, the moving parts about this, because like I said, nothing is complex, nothing is brand new. I didn't reinvent anything. I created a bunch of scripts to make this stuff easier for myself. I made it easier than Googling. Like I said, nothing here is 100%. If you're actively going to use it, hopefully for legitimate purposes, sanity check anything you're looking at. Make sure it makes sense. Make sure you think you're looking at so-and-so's house, not the guy next door, like in my case. Like I said, the locational stuff works a lot better if you have a bunch of data to look at, most especially if you know kind of what you're looking for, that you've actually driven by these locations and collected this data yourself. It's quicker, but then also you can kind of trust the information more. All the scripts that I'm mentioning, just as a sidebar, I try to make them Unix friendly, which is basically simple command line inputs, quick outputs, very simple, so you can kind of pipe it back and forth if you're cleaning stuff up. Proper exit code 01 in case you actually want to use this stuff for something else and make sure it like ended correctly or if it bombed out. So some of the stuff I've used, this kind of started with a little toy called WUDS, or Wi-Fi User Detection System, by a guy named Tim Tomes. I'm guessing you guys have heard of Landmaster 53, mostly known for Recon NG. It's really simple. It's a Python PKP based system for Unix that records Wi-Fi probes, and you can have it kick off an alert. The idea was he was just scanning people near his house and understanding when people were showing up that maybe he didn't know about. And he did a bunch of fixes to it and all that, but I kind of get the vibe that it was more of just something fun for him. And he apparently was smarter than me and basically put it out there and didn't get too crazy and go farther down the rabbit hole. I made a few slight modifications. Really the biggest one, I've had a few issues with it detecting signal strength in some hardware, and I'm still kind of working on, but the biggest one was something super simple. I just made it start recording the local host name of whatever device it was recording onto, so theoretically in the future, if you want to, or if I want to, you could put almost like little simple sensor kind of concepts out, so then you have data coming into a centralized location. You have a way of separating it out. No, okay, it came from this host, it was over there. And then you can kind of look at signal and do kind of a mediocre location spotting of a device if you wanted to do that. Haven't really gone down there, but it seemed like a simple addition. A few of the scripts that I've added, SSID scan, just to quickly go through the database that it kicks out. A couple scripts called check all targets and detect targets. You can kind of configure it to know certain things about a target. And this is just a script to go through and see if it's seen the target recently. I mentioned the Bluetooth address script. That is just to go through and, like I said, go up one in hex and down one in hex and try to connect to the device and just let you know if it found what it believes to be the correct one. So if you want to bust out your Ubertooth or do whatever dirtiness there, you can. And then quickly, some of the hardware. If you're using WUDS, it uses Python, it uses PKP. We all love us some Python, but it's a little heavy depending on what you're using it on. If you're using it on a real machine, a laptop, a server, you're great. Even down to Raspberry Pis and BeagleBones, it's great. When you start getting into the smaller devices, like the Dropboxes and stuff like that, it gets to be a little bit strong, but I have a script that I need to clean up a little bit, and I'll add to the rest of these, where you can just pretty much do a TCP dump, and then it will grab all the data, just pull the probes out, and kind of clean it up a little bit, and then make it so you can import it directly into the same WUDS database, so you have kind of a centralized location for this stuff. Well, the black text is a lot too dark. The thing on the left is a ZSUN wireless SD card reader. The goal of this is you can put little micro SD cards in, plug it to your machine, and get to it, or if you just plug it into something with power, you can use your phone to get to your SD card. It's basically running a small embedded Linux OpenWRT, and so I want to figure out how to actually put OpenWRT on it to give yourself a lot more flexibility. So the downside of that is it has no built-in power, so you have to plug it into power. The positive side to me is if you're one of those people that have 10 million little like 1 gig micro SD cards laying around that you just can't throw away, perfect use, because that can be the file system. And also, while I haven't found a good place for them in the States, so prepare to wait from China, these things are about 10 bucks a pop. Little teeny things, you could plug them in anywhere as long as you provide it power through the USB port. So I mean, think about stuff like your televisions in places, the public places that would have those adapter USB ports inside just for power. Perfect for something to legitimately place there if you'd like. The thing on the right is and I'm going to forget the exact brand, model. It's a TP-Link 3040, 5040. It's basically a small access point that has a built-in battery. Nice thing I love about this is the batteries actually pop off the back like a cell phone. You can swap out the battery in case it goes bad. It's 35 bucks, give or take, off Amazon Prime. You will see this online. This is actually, if you've ever followed the Mini Poner guys, Kevin Bong and those guys, this is the Mini Poner 2, the hardware they did it on. The guys outside yesterday, the Hacker Warehouse, sell these. Not to take away from them. If you want to just go ahead and spend, I think, 100 and 120 bucks or whatever, they've got all the Mini Poner stuff on there, all ready to go for you. But again, it's 35 bucks on Amazon if you want to do it yourself. They have the instructions online if you want to add all that stuff. But again, these are two very simple devices that could easily do low-end TCP dumps and collect this data for you and do processing later. So another not exactly connected recommendation that I use WUDS for, that is, again, the main goal for any of this, just to amuse myself really, is you can keep track of people as they come and go. Tim Tomes added support for pushover, but his support was pretty much like, if I get an alert and it's not an exclude list, I send out. If I probe and it's not on my exclude list, I send out an alert. I don't want to get every single alert. I don't want to see all that stuff, so I kind of like added some scripts to basically only alert me when I want, and has some lock files to make sure it only does it. So that way you can get an alert through pushover when certain people show up, like in this example would be my CISO or VP. So when I'm running a little bit late and still driving across town, I know when they showed up, or the VP of sales when they're in the office. So I kind of know what I'm walking into. And it's a little bit handy, I would say. WIGLE, a data source. I'm guessing a lot of you, if not everyone, has heard of WIGLE. WIGLE's awesome. WIGLE is crowdsourced war driving. This is a website where people get information, they war drive, go around, just collect SSIDs and being broadcast from access points and geolocations, and then they upload it to this site. You have to have an account to go on and actually do a search. The account completely free. They hand you an Android app for data collection, so you can just download it completely for free, start collecting it. And pros, like I said, it's free. There's a ton of information. I mean, I used an example earlier today when I was trying to work through some stuff quickly, and it was like, here's something in Shanghai. I'm like, pretty sure my guy didn't go through there, but the con is it's slow. There's really no API for automation, and while I started working on that, the common thread of this talk is I ran out of time to script that, but I will get that finished if you do want to check back later. My personal favorite side, again, is the local databases. Whenever possible, I try to get my data local on my laptop right here. It's quicker if you don't have internet access. If you need something quickly, you still have it. The WIGLE Android app collects this data. You can enter an account and then share it with the WIGLE website, so then anyone can grab your information and use it if they want. Or you can be a jerk like me and just drive by specific locations you think you may need and never upload this data and have it all there. The actual app will let you export this stuff in CVS, but if you've ever tried to export a really big database to CSV rather on a small cell phone, it's not fun. But then I realized there's no real point because it stores all this on a SQLite database, which is way easier to deal with. So the Pro, free app, easy to get all this information. If you pull the database, which I have scripts that actively know how to read those databases, do stuff with it really fast. The con, if you didn't drive past it, the script doesn't know about it, and it may or may not be some data that you'd like to believe in. Another data source, as I mentioned, Google Maps. Google Maps Web API, without an account or paying them anything, will hand you a JSON of information based on the latitude and longitude. This JSON's actually kind of impressive. It breaks down the results into metro area, the city, the neighborhood, down to the rooftop as it defines the location from the northeast to southwest corner of what it believes is the rooftop of the address you just said. I mean, it's kind of crazy to put this in and realize how far they've taken it down. When you think about sometimes when you look at the top-down view on Google Maps, how you can kind of tell where it's like pieces stitched together. These are the pieces stitched together. They actually have the coordinates, will hand it to you. The pro, it's Google, so it's free and fast, and the con is it's Google, and it's not quite perfect. Kind of like the example, street addresses are often off by one. Not really necessarily Google's fault, because it's really kind of down to how the information was stored. Another thing I found that Google does a lot more than the other source I use is they'll often give you a side street instead of what would be the main location. Like, for example, my office is off Kennedy Boulevard, and it nails the address, but it gives like a side street, which is the little street that I always, cut through and speed up to get to work because I'm running late. So it's a legitimate address, and if you just have some reason you need to physically get there to look at more information, it works. But again, like I said, you need to kind of sanity check all this stuff. And like I said, at the bottom, Google knows and sees all. You might as well use their information. They're collecting it from you anyways. The original source I used for this stuff is Texas A&M University has a geoservices project, which isn't exactly free. You can get a free account and has some limits. The accuracy is a little bit closer than Google. It's not by a ton. It's not Google. The cons, like I said, it's not completely free. With most of these uses, you're never going to use what you get with the free account. You're never going to go over and have to start paying them. It's slow compared to Google, not a shock there. And quite frankly, I kind of like using Google better than a university and wasting their bandwidth on the silly stuff that amuses me on the weekends or night times. But it's still another source of information, so I went ahead and put that up there. Data sources, voter record. Like I said, you can find this information online. Just Google for it. The data, like I said, typically CSV format. It's really not that big. Florida was just give or take about 3.75 gigs uncompressed. That's the straight CSV files, straight text format sitting on a drive. Pro, it's free. As far as I could tell, all states make this available. 3.75 gigs of information, that could actually be multiple addresses for people and a little bit more historical information. That's really not that bad when you think about it. And again, the benefit of not having to worry about, is this address and the name I just found, is that the person that lives at that house or the person that owns that house and is renting it to someone else? You get a little bit more accurate information if you're down to looking for an actual individual. Cons, it's CSV, so load into a database that you can search with, or at very least, like I said, it's broken up by county. So you can make it a little bit faster. Like, again, I'm from the Tampa area, so I can narrow down my searches by searching for letters H for Hillsborough, P for Pasco, Pinellas, and a few other ones. So then I'm looking through 3 or 4 out of 50-some files, so it definitely speeds it up a bit. I'm always told I have to do a demo, and again, this is my first talk, so I did not want to screw with the demo gods. I'll be completely honest. This demo is sort of live in the fact that I spent 20 minutes towards the end of the day here recording some information. It was seriously about 20 minutes just grabbing probes, nothing big, and you will see why this is a failed demo. I didn't get that far with it, but again, I wanted to be honest with this, so I went, looked at the data, picked something that looked interesting, and tried to take it as far as I could. So here you go. So again, here's this demo. Here's the data. I sat down at one of the tables outside. It was like 5:30 maybe yesterday. It was maybe 20 minutes. Didn't really catch it. Here's the probes I saw. Some of them really not that surprising. Disney, E-Club Ballroom, those things I gotta assume is Disney. I'm really amazed how often I see people advertising and looking for a network called FBI Surveillance Fan, no matter where I am through this freaking country. It seems like the FBI Surveillance Fans are very common. How deep does the rabbit hole go down there on the bottom left? That was kind of a new one for me. Actually, when I got to the hotel last night to start working on this portion, I saw one called Totally Not the Police. So if you were at the La Quinta, hi. And then if you look at the rest of these, nothing too exciting. Not sure Wi-Fi, 5 gigahertz, Holiday Inn, some stuff like that. So I kind of looked through those, and after looking at the stuff for a little while, I tried to find one that seemed interesting or at least somewhat kind of unique and could be used. So I noticed this one called FLVS. Honestly, that stuck out to me because it's not, because it's only 4 characters. It kind of reminded me of the Verizon Fios ones that are 5 letters. So I decided to go with that one and take a look at it. So I did a quick search with one of my scripts across the data that I collected to see who was looking for that. So it came back with 2 different MAC addresses, as you see. Again, I do not know who these people are. I probably should have blacked out that last part, but your devices are sending out this data anyway, so anyone could go look for it. So I've got 2 devices that are looking for this. So then I decided to see these two devices, what other Wi-Fi networks are they maybe looking for? What do they have in common? So I went and looked for all of those and then had it count and summarize them so I could see which ones came up most between them. There's the list of all the other ones. Kind of looking down through them, to me personally, the FLVS was still the more interesting because most of these are pretty, Home, TiVo, Apple TV, Belkin 54G, Muffin and Orange Muffin. I'm curious about that, but I've seen Muffin a lot lately and I have no idea why. The 2-wire one, that's interesting to me, but I haven't figured out or found anything that describes exactly what those names are. Those are our AT&T U-verse uses devices called 2-wire gateways. I was really hoping those were unique, kind of like the Bright House stuff or the FiOS stuff, but I'm seeing like the same 3 digits being used many, many times. You'll find them on WIGLE all over the country, so I really don't know what those are, and I really can't narrow it down, so I decided to stick with the FLVS. So I went to go look, and well, it wasn't in my local database. Again, what I'm calling my local database is the database I keep on my laptop that was completely sourced by my little crappy phone that I have running the WIGLE app. This is totally just stuff I've driven by. I was really hoping to rank up a lot more of them driving here from Tampa and back, but I don't think I've actively driven around anywhere on purpose just to collect that data. This is me driving around to work, home, errands, or whatnot. So, again, unfortunately, got to go to the website because I haven't written the web API stuff yet. So here's the website if you go for a search. As you see, it pulled up the SSID, and it pulled up a bunch of them. And then as you see, there's a bunch of different MAC addresses. So usually what I'll do is I will look for the most recent stuff. And it looked like the most recent spotted and submitted the website was December 11th of 2015. Pretty recent, I'll go with it. The thing that kind of was interesting to me was if you look at it, there's a couple different MAC addresses spotted, give or take the same time with the same thing. So this is probably a multi-access point network, probably a business, maybe a public Wi-Fi network or something for a metro area. I have no idea. To me, FLVS, I think Florida something. Don't know. This could be anywhere. What is it? Florida. Oh. God bless you, sirs. That would actually make sense what's going to be on the next slide or two, so thank you. So I go back and look, and I did a slight variation on the script to just take latitude and longitude, and it comes back and gives me an address. So, well, it seems kind of like a waste of time doing this since I pulled it from Google Maps, but let's go back to Google Maps anyways. And like I said, that makes sense. It pulled up G. Holmes Braddock Senior High in Miami, Florida, which, again, I'm now entertained, and that would explain the other locations for Florida Virtual School, but this one specifically, the most recent ones were spotted there. So that's now making me feel that this is probably less sure of a find right here. Pretty much at this point I stopped because there was not much more to go on. Even going past now that Florida Virtual School thing could mean that it could have been other schools even in the Orlando area. I decided just for giggles to look. I only found on Twitter for a quick search. Again, this was this morning really quickly in my hotel room. I found 2 people referencing Miami and Orlando at the same time because that's where the school was. These 2 notes right here are from 2 different people. Went ahead and blacked it out because, whatever. Obviously the 2014 thing, little old. The guy on the top was possibly talking about being here, but again, he's in Orlando for the week, so maybe he's at Sands coming this week. Who knows? I didn't find anything that really narrowed it down, so I decided not to move any farther because there's no point. It'd be boring information, or maybe putting someone's information out here that doesn't make sense. And back to Florida Virtual School, it could be Orlando. It could be someone down the street or something. So again, that's why I entitled that fail demo. I wanted to give you an honest view, and well, I picked one. I got 20 minutes of info, looked at something, and didn't get that far. But so again, what's your phone telling us? Where you work, where you eat, where you hang out, where you live. But again, this comes down to if you're using their Wi-Fi, and this crowd probably doesn't use it quite as much. I mean, people are actively encouraged to not do this anymore. I've seen commercials for this. You see stuff on the news about not connecting to public Wi-Fi. But again, people still feel safe to go to their house or their office and connect to it because, I mean, they're safe there. It's what I connect to every day. The IT guy down the way says it's cool. But to kind of fight against connecting this stuff, there's even a lot of cell phone plans like Republic Wireless or now Google Fi that heavily encourages. This is how they give you a cheap bill. Offload all of your stuff to Wi-Fi whenever possible, your phone calls and all that stuff. It's a cheaper bill. I mean, and a cheaper bill is one great way to encourage people to do something. In this case, connect to Wi-Fi. So really it comes down to thinking about who your target is and who is your target more likely to be, and 9 times out of 10 I'd be willing to wager it's more likely to be someone that probably could get found by these methods than necessarily folks in this room right now. So a quick overview. Again, as I mentioned, this is probably a little bit more for protecting your moms, grandmas, and all that, and keeping them from calling the Geek Squad and paying them. Don't let your devices auto-connect anywhere. I mean, obviously, there's sometimes you may want to. Don't advertise your SSID at home. That obviously, people can still find it if they're sitting outside your house and want to work at it, but, you know, I like to make people work for the fun. Use a boring SSID, like Linksys. Obviously, then you could argue that people could, you know, your phone could potentially connect to Linksys anywhere, and that's a common one. Two sides to that argument, but another fun thing about WIGLE is you can get stats on the most used Wi-Fi SSIDs across the country, and I think Linksys is #1, then it's Netgear's 2 or 3, but then it's mostly followed by Comcast stuff and then Charter stuff. And then another paranoid one is keep your known networks on your devices to a minimum and even clean them out regularly. If there's, you know, some place that you go to once every couple months to go meet someone and have dinner, maybe you don't need to leave their SSID in your phone to constantly probe out for on a regular basis. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm just as horrible at that as anyone else because it's convenient, then you put your phone back in your pocket and you forget about it. So, tinfoil hat version of that. Regularly change your home SSID. They can still find your SSID, so mix it up a little bit, you know? If you think someone might be actually screwing with you, make it hard for them. One that I'm going to probably try to start making myself do, your home is my home. Go onto WIGLE and find something across town from you if it has a unique ID, like one of those ISP examples I gave you, and manually set your home to be that one. So if they figure out and see your phone advertising that out, they go to WIGLE and look it up, and all of a sudden they're going across town and looking at some other guy's house, and not yours. Another big thing is a lot of stores are starting to use stuff for Wi-Fi tracking, and a lot of times they are actually using probes. So if you think you're going someplace like this, you can go back and look at some of those small devices that I showed, like the TP-Link, and write a small script to just go through a loop of spewing out SSID probes that mean absolutely nothing, that maybe are being sourced from MAC addresses that look like different types of phones, just because that way it'll make your device hopefully get lost in the mix and really confuse the crap out of whoever's looking at all those logs. And again, the easy mode down to just turn off your Wi-Fi if you're not going to be around anything. I mean, there's apps. Dragorn, the guy who does Kismet, has smarter Wi-Fi. Give that guy $2. We've all probably made more than $2 off of his work over the years. And that way it tries to actually see networks that it may know and know when to turn stuff on and off. And I don't know if he actually finally did it, but he was actually going to set it to start recognizing cell phone towers that you mark as safe, so that way if it sees a cell phone tower near your house, it'll turn on Wi-Fi then. So it's a good and easy option. And that is it. Thank you for listening. If you want any of this stuff, there you go. Appreciate your time. And I'll say any questions if there happens to be any, but it's not there now, but yes. Go check in a week or two and all this stuff will be there. You'll look at it and you'll be like, why did I ask that guy for these scripts? I could have written this garbage myself, but yeah. Anyone else? Thank you for your time. And thank you for supporting B-Sides. It's good that Florida has these things.